Hello, everyone. Welcome. I'm Ashanti Golar, the president of Emerge, and we are celebrating Black women leaders for Black History Month. And I'm excited because today I get to talk to not only one of my favorite Black women leaders, Black women elected officials, but literally one of my favorite people, Representative Attica Scott from Kentucky. She was elected in 2016 to serve in the Kentucky General Assembly, and she was the first Black woman elected since 2000. So it was absolutely historic, and she has made a phenomenal mark during her time, and I can't wait to talk to her about it today. Attica, welcome. How are you?
I'm wonderful, Ashanti. How are you? And thank you for having me.
Oh, always. Just appreciate you being able to make the time. And I have to tell everyone this story. I was very excited about the first time that I got to email Attica for something because I had admired her for so long. So I send this very formal email, because I want to be professional. And Attica replies back, "Hey, Queen." And I died because that's really what I wanted to say to her. I wanted to be like, "Queen Attica, how are you today?" So the fact that she called me a queen when I felt the same way about her, and then I was like, "Can we be friends? I just want us to be friends because you're amazing."
Love you, Ashanti. And I'm so glad that we are friends. And you're right, exactly, right? And we are queens, you're a queen, and this is about lifting up each other as queens, right?
It is, it is. And we cannot do this series without you just highlighting your amazing work and just groundbreaking, as I mentioned before, what you did being the first Black woman in the Kentucky General Assembly since 2000. And I feel that's so important to say because lately we just keep hearing about all these Black women getting elected to office, which is wonderful, but there's always room for improvement. But what made you want to take that leap when you said, "I'm running for office"?
It was really the encouragement of my family and friends. The first time I ran for office, I was sitting around a kitchen table with sister girls for 6 or 7 months. And we kept saying, we don't feel like people in local or state or federal office in Kentucky represent us, our beliefs and our values. So one of us needs to run for office. And then they all looked at me and said, it's going to be you. And they put their energy, their resources, their commitment behind me to run me for office. And this was 11 years ago. And it was at the same time that I was going through Emerge Kentucky. I'm also a graduate of the first class of Emerge Kentucky.
And what made you want to do Emerge Kentucky? And I feel this is such an important thing to talk about because we hear it all the time is that women, Black women, they don't feel that they're that candidate. That's why Emerge exists because we know women are the best candidates. But what made you want to take the leap to do Emerge Kentucky in that first class, something that was very new? You could have been like, this, I don't know, this could be questionable, but you went for it.
Well, and you're right that oftentimes we don't think that we should or can run for office. And sometimes we're told not to run for office. It's not our time, or you're not the best person for this position. But I was teaching as an adjunct faculty member at our community college, sharing an office. There were like four of us sharing an office with someone who was on this new board of directors of this Emerge Kentucky thing. And she leaned over to me and she said, I know you're interested in politics. We're starting this new initiative. I think you would be perfect for it. And that was huge to have another woman see that in me. And she encouraged me to apply for Emerge Kentucky, and I applied. And Ashanti, I think it's really important for people to know that I was a scholarship recipient to go through Emerge Kentucky. I was a single mom working a job and a half, and that scholarship really helped me to be able to go through the premier training program for Democratic women in Kentucky.
Awesome. You got elected. You have done wonderful things, and you bring your lived experience to your work. And we see that in all of the legislation you introduce. I love when you put up videos on your Twitter. Follow Attica on Twitter and Instagram if you're not, when you're advocating. And we know that is so important to ensure that we are seen in these bills, that there's actually someone who knows what it's like to live what everyone is talking about. So, can you take us through some of your bills? And once we're done talking about some of your bills, I do want to talk about the signature bill that you introduced because it's making a huge impact, but that definitely has to be its own question.
Okay, definitely. And I will say that, since you have stepped into this leadership role at Emerge, Ashanti, the way that Emerge has amplified its presence using tools like StreamYard or Zoom or all these other virtual platforms has been tremendous for us as Black women and other women across the country who are connecting to one another and finding that safe space where we can talk about politics and advocacy and support one another. So thank you for that work. And it really does encourage and inspire me to do more on social media, like you said, to share with folks about some of the bills that I'm working on. So I will say, y'all, I file lots of bills every session because I listen to my constituents and they come to me with thoughts and ideas. I love listening to young people and the ideas that they bring. And so I try to be responsive to them as well. But like you said, Ashanti, I'm also bringing my own lived experience. So I'll just talk about very quickly 3 bills that I'm really strongly committed to this session in trying to push forward and get passed. So one is the Crown Act to protect people who wear natural hair like mine, like yours, from discrimination.
Please twist over here.
Hey, from discrimination in housing, in education, and employment. So Kentucky is one of the states that still that discrimination happens. And so I have filed the Crown Act. My daughter, as some people may know, experienced a situation at her school when she was in high school where their school-based decision-making council created a new policy that you couldn't wear afros or braids or twists in school. And so
I remember when you posted that on your Twitter account, and I was outraged. I was like, leave the babies alone. Their hair has nothing to do with their education.
That's right. Nothing at all. Just as mine doesn't have anything to do with me being an effective legislator. And I have had people make comments about my hair and ask if I was going to cut it or change it now that I'm in office. So I still get those kinds of responses from people. That's right. I'm not, I'll switch it up, but
we good for that,
Yes. I'm going to keep it natural. The other bill that I'm working on that really excites me is the Maternal Care Act to address institutional and systemic racism in healthcare. Where I live in West Louisville, Black women are 3 to 4 times more likely to die in childbirth than white women I represent in the East End of Louisville. And this happens all across Kentucky. So this is the second year that I have filed the Maternal Care Act. And we're working with the ACLU, Planned Parenthood of Kentucky and Indiana, and other groups to really push forward the Maternal Care Act. So actually, I'm just going to talk about 2 because I know that our time is limited.
No, we will make the time. Those are so important. And I love seeing just our Black Women Emerge alums who are introducing the Crown Act. You've done it in Kentucky. We've had alums do it in Colorado, Virginia. And I think that's such the power of the network, how Black women alums, all of our alums inspire one another, that you all watch each other and see what you're doing. You introduce this great legislation. And I just need for everyone to know that you are also the original author of Breonna's Law, which is named after Breonna Taylor. I'm sure most people who are watching this know that it was a big issue last year. And I feel this is an important piece of why it's so important to have Black women in office. Because if you were not in the Kentucky State House, this would not have been introduced at all. No one would have been paying attention. And we saw you introduce it, Breonna's Law for Kentucky. We're seeing it pass across the country. Again, other Black Women Emerge alums who are championing it. Tell us why it was so important for you as a Black woman, as a state legislator, as a mom, to see this bill introduced.
Yes, thank you, Ashanti. I mean, you're so right. Breonna's Law for Kentucky really is the #1 priority piece of legislation that I'm working on this session. And it really grew out of the movement for justice for Breonna Taylor. My daughter, who was a 19-year-old when Breonna, who was 26, was murdered, said to me, "Mom, I wanted to be an EMT, but that didn't protect Breonna Taylor.
Mm.
And so, I'm a mom of a Black daughter and a Black son. I'm a Black woman. Of course, I was going to lead the effort to restrict no-knock warrants across Kentucky, which is what Breonna's law does. It restricts the use of no-knock search warrants across Kentucky because that's what part of what led to the murder of Breonna Taylor. And so we've been able to garner amazing support. Organizations like Hood to the Holler and the ACLU, of course, the ACLU is a running theme here, but they're amazing supporters of our advocacy efforts. Lots of groups across Kentucky, Kentuckians for the Commonwealth, are stepping up to support Breonna's Law for Kentucky because they know that in rural Kentucky, folks have issues with sheriff's officers and the way they treat people and abuse search warrant processes, just like we do in urban Louisville. So this is an issue that has truly brought our Commonwealth together. And that's a testament, not to my leadership as a politician, but to community rising up and saying, out of our protests, we're going to push for policy. And that's what's happening right now.
So amazing. And you mentioned your daughter, who is also named Ashanti. So of course,
Yes.
when I found that out, I'm like, see, best friends. We were meant to be best friends. But even though she was disheartened by what happened to Breonna, you talked about how it still inspired her to become more active. You saw so many young people around Kentucky get really active. I love that one of the marches was organized just by young women. So what would you say to those moms, those dads, those adult figures who are watching this, who want for their young people to get involved, and why they don't also just have to be the activists, why they can also be the elected official?
That's right. You can be, people call me the reptivist, or a state representative who's an activist.
I love that. You need that on a shirt. You need to trademark that.
That's right. And I know that's not for everyone. So if you want to run for office and focus on policy, please do that, because we need you to create the policies that keep people safe and not having to protest for their lives. And if you want to get out on the front lines and you want to protest for justice, do that. Bring your family with you. We created an amazing space at Injustice Square Park in downtown Louisville where kids would get on the bullhorn and lead chants. Young people would organize marches and they would speak and amplify their own voices. Artists came and gave their art to the movement. So it is something that the family can do together, raising your voices for justice. That's what my daughter and I have been able to do, is march together, protest together, raise our voices for justice together. And she has been able to inspire her classmates at the University of Louisville to speak up more. She has said to them, you cannot consider me your friend and say you're an ally of mine if you're not speaking up about the issues that are front and center for my life. And so she's really got the Government Association and other groups to step up. And that's what we need. We need people to see that young leadership and follow young leaders.
I love it. Definitely Attica's daughter, for sure, the next elected official. So Attica, I've enjoyed talking to you as always, but I do want to close out by asking, this Black History Month, what are your hopes for seeing more Black women in elected office?
Oh, Ashanti, thank you so much for this conversation. And I will say, shout out to Kentucky. When I was elected, I was the only one out of 138 members. And what I said to people the entire 2 years I was in office, please double that number. And then 2 years later, we got our first ever Indian immigrant, Representative Kulkarni, who's also an Emerge alum. And then just last year, we got another Black woman, Colonel Pamela Stevenson, who's also an Emerge alum. Yes. And so Kentucky listened. And that's what I encourage folks to do across the country. Look at your state legislative bodies, your local bodies, your state bodies, and ask yourself, who's not represented or who is underrepresented, and who can I encourage to run for office? And not only encourage them, but fully support them. That's how we get a more representative democracy.
We need more Atticas in order to create a representative democracy and inclusive democracy. Thank you so much, Attica, for everything that you do. Thank you to all of you for watching this conversation. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel if you want to see more conversations like this, where we highlight the work of the amazing Emerge women across our 27 affiliates. And you can always find us at emergeamerica.org. Thank you, everyone, and we'll see you at the next interview.